Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports coming to you worldwide on the iHeart Radio Network, the number one network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the number one sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond, and London, England, as well as Paris, France. And don't want to leave out Russia, since a lot of you guys are tapping into Big C Sports as well. Also, my good friends from Canada, we love you so much, Canada. But Big C, there's no one I love more than you good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave. Big C, how's it going for all you good old boys, Big C?
I think everybody's out here confused with those transitions. Yesterday we had this deluge of rain, and then all of a sudden somebody flipped the script. We're 87 degrees today.
Yeah.
And everybody's walking around with fishing poles. I think they all saw Julio Jones on ESPN doing football season.
I'm sure they'll be joined by the Cleveland Cavaliers going fishing also. Big C, a lot of good things happening on this beautiful Happy Friday all around the country. In fact, all around the globe on this beautiful June 16th, 2017. And you talked about so many great things happening. We just finished the Golden State Warriors celebration, their parade yesterday in downtown Oakland near Lake Merritt. They had over 1 million fans attend the Golden State Warriors celebration. And just to show how popular the NBA is, and we brought up that story about the golf and how you can go sit anywhere you want at a golf event now because like 10 people show up. They had over 265 international journalists cover the NBA in Oakland, and they had them from 35 different countries, Big C. Not only that, but they had many major media people from all over the United States. Talk about the global impact of the NBA, and I just want to remind you, 90% of the league is African American. They contracted over 265 countries, Big C. Your thoughts on that, Big C?
So this is a league that you go back to the mid-'70s, and really nobody wanted to watch on television. These games were tape delayed.
Yeah.
You know, you got them after the late local news.
Yeah.
In the middle of the night. You know, you're talking about some 40 years ago in the NBA. That's not that far removed.
No.
You know, from where it is now to where it is must-see TV, Charlton.
Yeah.
And it is the hottest media pass you can get. You know, we all talk about the credentials for the Super Bowl, how many countries and how many people attend.
Yeah.
But you got to look at a smaller venue when it comes to basketball.
Yeah.
Versus the Super Bowl. You know, they don't have this elaborate press box.
No.
At the basketball game, generally they're sitting in a corner that's been made up for the media.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, you know, the worldwide interest in the NBA, when you think about players, where they come from, Charlton, I think Petrusiak, the center for the Golden State Warriors, is from Latvia.
Yeah.
And you think about last year, Cleveland had a player from Bosnia and one from Lithuania.
Yeah, and that that shows you the reach.
It's an international game, Charlton, that everyone wants a piece of.
I tell you, Big C, and part of what we do with Big C Sports is we keep it real. And when we talk about the global reach of the iHeart Radio Network and Big C Sports, and you know our Twitter followers come from all over the globe, and just realizing that 265 countries, they came to Oakland. Okay, they came to Oakland, California, which everyone thinks of being San Francisco and a suburb. But Oakland has nearly 500,000 people in that city, and one of the top 10 largest cities in California, one of the top 3 in Northern California. And I look at the fact that we look at a game, as you just brought up, about 40 years ago, you could watch it at midnight because they could not get prime time. And now, because the league is so popular, it really is a chance to showcase African-American talent, not just the United States, but worldwide. And the fact that media companies, Big C, will fly across the globe to go watch this event where about 90% are African-American, I think that says a lot to the power of the black dollar, not just the athlete, Big C. Your thought?
This game has exploded exponentially. You know, when they could not find a sponsor for the NBA, when, you know, David Stern took over as commissioner, Larry O'Brien really didn't think about marketing the league as a whole, Charlton, when he was there.
Yeah.
When David Stern came in and took over, you know, his first ambition was to find advertisers for the league, sponsorship for the league. You think about it, the kind of money that the NBA makes now,
yeah,
and they were looking for sponsors sponsorship. And the first major sponsor they thought they were going to get was the U.S. Army.
Yeah.
The U.S. Army, instead of choosing the NBA, Charlton, chose the major indoor soccer league.
Yeah.
That's how low the NBA was 40 years ago. That the major indoor soccer league had more prestige
Wow.
than an NBA game.
Yeah.
My, how times have changed.
Yeah.
To where the NBA can turn down potential sponsors and advertisers because your money's not big enough now. Where if you got on board,
Yeah.
no less than 40 years ago, you'd be a major contributor. But the NBA now, can choose its partners as far as what it wants to do, just like with the players, Dalton.
Yeah.
These players are worldwide entities, not just players, but they're entities. They're marketed around the world. They're known. I mean, you can go to any international country.
Yeah.
And there's NBA jerseys being worn, Charlton, more than NFL jerseys.
Yeah.
NBA jerseys being worn. Players, and kids and parents. Everybody has embraced the NBA because they're iconic figures.
Yeah.
That you can see their face.
Yeah.
And that's what has made the NBA grow, is that the league has took the time to market it to players' faces, not just their number.
Yeah.
And that's why the NBA is on the top of the heap as far as a spectator sport, Jones.
Well, that's a very good point, Big C. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them that Charlton and Big C sent you. So again, congratulations to the Golden State Warriors, and really congratulations to all of Northern California. Sometimes they have this thing called Roar Arena because the roar and the lightning bolts and all the sound that you hear when you go to a Warriors basketball game. I'm just pleased to see the fact that, number one, Oakland's known as a high crime city, okay, because there's not as many jobs as people might think there'd be in a lot of suburban cities. But for the fact that the city can come together and celebrate a team that's won a championship, and it can kind of pull people out of some of the issues of not having income that can do. Just seeing the players reach out and going downtown on floats and cars and getting out and shaking hands with people. I know people might say, well, that's just a sport. That doesn't give someone a job. But it gives people hope, and it gives people something to believe in, Big C. So being around Northern California, growing up in Northern California, sometimes the Bay Area at times, I'm just proud of the fact that a lot of people can see that Oakland is a great place to live. They need jobs like any other city, Big C. They have great championship teams. We talked about that yesterday with the Raiders, with the Oakland A's, and now Golden State winning championships. So it's a great place to live, a lot of great things to do in the Northern California Bay Area. So congratulations to them and all the good old boys that helped make the Golden State Warriors the world champions. Because we call them the champions of the universe. And as we look around, still can't get away from the Bay Area because so much significance comes out of Northern California. Your friend Roz Goodell, out of all the time that everybody said, well, Roz Goodell, someone's being ostracized, Goodell's saying that Kaepernick's not being ostracized by all of the good old boys that he's hired by to help make them money, Big C. Is Goodell drinking too much moonshine, Big C? Your thoughts?
Goodell is watching his paycheck, Charles. He knows that all of the NFL owners pay him about $1.2, $1.3 million a year apiece.
Yeah.
And so he's going to keep peace with them, Charlton. Goodell will let players go by the wayside.
Yeah.
He's done it before. He's sacrificed players. He's gone after players.
Yeah.
Trying to make, a point that he's the ultimate power.
Yeah.
But for him to sit there and say that Colin Kaepernick is not being ostracized, that just shows you the honesty or lack of honesty of Roger Goodell. This is the commissioner of the NFL.
Yeah.
Who all people know what's going on with the people who employ him.
Yeah.
This young man did nothing negative to anybody, Charlton. He
No.
made a stance.
Yeah.
He made a social stance, and by him making a social stance, he made a lot of racist people uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And racist, it doesn't make any difference whether you're an owner of a team and you're a racist or a fan and a racist, but that's what he did. He didn't go after any particular race, Charlton.
No.
But the racists were upset because those are the things that they advocate that were wrong in society.
Yeah.
They're okay with it because it doesn't come into their neighborhood.
Yeah.
But Colin Kaepernick is an NFL talented quarterback.
Yep.
When you look out there, Charlton, in the last 10 years, how many active quarterbacks in the NFL have taken their team to the Super Bowl? That's what you have to look at with Colin Kaepernick.
Yeah.
And not only that, how many active quarterbacks have taken their teams to the NFC Championship game? Charlton?
Back to back.
That's what you look at on Colin Kaepernick's resume.
Yeah.
You don't have that up and down the ledger of the free agent quarterback quarterbacks that were signed in the NFL during this offseason,
Yeah.
none of those players, Charlton, can capture Colin Kaepernick's resume.
No, not at all.
That's all that's be said. As much as the love affair there was with Tony Romo,
Yeah.
Tony Romo could not match Colin Kaepernick's resume.
No.
People say, Tony Romo's great, he should be a starter somewhere. Okay, show me what he's done in the last 3 years that exceeds anything that Colin Kaepernick has done.
Yeah.
Really in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Has Tony Romo done anything in the NFL that exceeded what Colin Kaepernick done? No, Charlton.
No.
So it's only racist when people were saying that teams are going to make trades for Tony Romo. They're going to wait for free agency for Tony Romo.
Yeah.
Colin Kaepernick was sitting there healthy, younger, better playoff-winning quarterback.
Yeah.
And no one would touch him, Charlton. Only racism would keep him out of football.
Yeah, that's funny that we talk about the great players that we have all over the NFL, and we have the Commissioner Goodell. I don't think he's ever said anything. In fact, you're the one that brought this up more than anyone. The New York Giants family, the Mara family, and I think Brown was that kicker that was beating his wife over 20 times. And I don't think Roger Goodell came out and said anything. He said nothing at all. Not one statement.
About Josh Brown, the kicker for the New York Giants, even when the Giants cut him.
Yeah.
He never said anything. Now, you're going to tell me that the NFL with its own policing department, when you can find out a player's been drinking at a nightclub and hasn't gotten in his car,
Yeah.
that you don't know about 20 police reports from several different police precincts about a player beating his wife. And at the Pro Bowl, the commissioner's over there in Hawaii. Okay?
Yeah.
When the Mara family had to move Josh Brown's wife and kids to a separate hotel and hide them from him, not just move him, Charlton, but they put him in a hotel that he didn't even know. They wouldn't let him know of his whereabouts. Arranged flights for them to leave the island while he could not be available during the game so that he couldn't intervene in this situation. This was hidden by the Mara family. And Goodell didn't levy a fine on the team.
No.
He didn't levy a fine or suspension on Brown. It was okay because this was a white player doing it. So, it must have been something other than him that drew him to being violent towards his wife. He wouldn't just do that of clear conscience, Charles.
No, Big C. And so I'm glad you brought that point up because you're only going to hear about that on Big C Sports. ESPN won't touch it. Fox Sports won't touch it. Not even the great CNN. And I like all of those programs. So hopefully we'll have just more equal time no matter who you support, Roger Goodell, who you're going to chastise. I've never seen him chastise any owners, especially the Mara family. If you have a daughter or a wife and someone beats you up 20 times, the Mara family will hide that person who does that, and the commissioner won't say anything about it for the NFL. Big C, also around the globe in sports, we talk about Michael Phelps. Now, I saw this commercial for a TV program, and they had this lady getting in the Shark Tank. When I was younger, I used to watch ABC Wide World of Sports. They always had some silly person who was brave enough to get into a cage, and have them lower that cage down in the water. And around that water, they'd be throwing dead fish with blood coming out of the fish, Big Z. I'm sure you good old boys are familiar with that. But they would attract the sharks. Now, why in the world is Michael Phelps, is he trying to race a shark in the cave without a cage? Tell me more about that story coming up, Big Z, your thoughts.
Well, Charlton, this is all about publicity. You think about Michael Phelps in the pool in the Olympics. The top speed he ever reached was 6 miles an hour, okay? Treading water, 6 miles an hour. Now, great whites have been clocked between 30 and 35 miles an hour. So either Michael Phelps is going to get himself a grand head start, or this is going to be a one-legged race.
One-legged is the right word, Big Z.
This is going to be a one-legged race. That shark goes quickly, but I think what they have set out, Charlton, is some type of tank with a screen between it that will allow, Phelps to go down one side and the shark to blow him away. And you got to be a little careful. The shark may go down and make a U-turn. And then,
that's funny. I understand the ways to try to prove that you're the number one swimmer in the universe, but trying to do it against sharks, sometimes you might want to rethink it. The man is amazing, though. I think he has over 22 Olympic medals, and just great seeing how he had some controversy, Big C, like a lot of people in life do, is real talk. But he came back from it, and he was embraced by society and became, another great swimmer, and now he's going on to other things. But if the only competition you can find is a shark, maybe he should try to play football or something. See, I'm sure he'll get a chance to make a team. Even before Colin Kaepernick, he might get a tryout, so that might give him some more re-encouragement. I want to ask you something, too, about the world of money. How people do things for money, and you think about the great fight that's coming up in Las Vegas, and obviously you and Charles Barkley, you guys know a lot about the inside stories to sports. I don't know how you get your information, but I hear that more money is being poured on McGregor than there is Floyd Money Mayweather. Now I understand for the fight perspective, you don't make no money putting your money where Floyd Money Mayweather is, because he's expected to win. Out of 100 people, 99 are picking Floyd. Why is money going on McGregor, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, it's always that long shot, Charlton, that everybody wants to take a chance at.
Yeah.
And if you go to the Kentucky Derby,
yeah,
and you see a horse that's a 50 to 1 long shot, you're gonna lay $20 on it because there's a chance of getting a payday.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember years ago that there were two young gentlemen heading off to school.
Yeah.
And, they were going through Vegas, and they looked at the sports book.
Yeah.
And this is back when Northwestern made the Rose Bowl, okay?
Yeah.
And Northwestern was such a long shot to make the Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
And so they took the money that their parents gave them to go to college and get on Northwestern
yeah.
to make it to the Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
Northwestern made it to the Rose Bowl that year, Charlton. These two young men collected over $1 million out in Las Vegas.
Wow.
It was a $1,000 bet.
Wow.
They made a $1,000 bet and made over $1 million because Northwestern was that much of a long shot.
Yeah.
But Coach Fitzpatrick got them to the Rose Bowl, Charlton.
Yeah, I remember it.
And so that's what you're looking at with McGregor. Now, a lot of that money is coming from Irish Americans.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Young millennials, the MMA crowd.
Yeah.
But, the boxing aficionados are going to bet on Mayweather.
Yeah.
But, when you're sitting there and you're going to have 20, 25 to 1 odds on this fight,
yeah. Yeah.
Okay? So if you're going to lay some money, take a chance.
Yeah.
You never know. Somebody might get hit with that lucky shot. That's what everybody always thinking.
Yeah.
In boxing, it takes one punch.
Yeah.
And we've seen that when Buster Douglas knocked out Mike Tyson.
Yeah.
It was one punch. He went down. When Ali beat Liston, it was one punch. He went down.
Yeah.
When Holyfield beat Buster Douglas, it was one punch. He went down. So in boxing, stranger things can happen.
Yeah.
More often than not. Even George Foreman, the last title that he won on Michael Moore, it was just an uppercut.
Yeah.
And he dropped the guy, and he had regained the heavyweight title.
Yeah.
Some 20 plus years after he lost it.
That's amazing.
The stranger things will happen in boxing. And McGregor, being such a scrapper, he's hoping that he can get inside and land that one inside shot.
Yeah.
Because as long as he stays outside, it's going to be like Phelps and the shark. He's going to be eaten alive.
Well, we understand being eaten alive, but obviously, from a betting perspective, if you're betting against the current, sometimes you got to win if the upset happens. And I know there was a good old boy on the I was watching one of the sports programs, and they had this boxer that actually boxed, Conor McGregor about a year ago, and Conor couldn't hit him. And he was saying, if Conor couldn't hit me, and I'm not the world champion, even though he did when he was a champion at one time, and he's nowhere near as good as Floyd Money Mayweather, but we know this is all make-believe. This is not about the second or third best fighter in the world getting their chance at the world champion, like when Sugar Ray was beating up Thomas Hitman Hearns, and when Sugar Ray had the Roberto Duran fight. This is not like those guys fighting from back in the day, Big C. This is all staged. There's no money to be made for fight number 2 if Floyd Money Mayweather wins, okay? That's just a fact. Now, Floyd has so much money, he doesn't need more money as far as we know. But when you live in Vegas, sometimes you owe people, Big C. Sometimes you take a fight against a guy that's never even been a fighter just to get the $100 million. So if there is a fight 2, we know that it's all set up. But I do appreciate Dana White and his brilliance for making over $4 billion by doing a sport that many people they volunteer to go get beaten up for free, Big C. You didn't have to pay them to get into the ring. I'm sure you've seen that at many local sports bars. And so speaking of that, I just want to get your thoughts again on Mayweather. If there's a reason for him, you got to tell me his motivation. He has all the money he ever needs. Okay, he has all the fame he ever needs. Big C, he's one of the fighters that has an undefeated record. I think someone went 84-0 back in the day and didn't get the same type of acclaim that Floyd Money has. But outside of just ego, I'm sure $100 million answers the question. Is that the only reason he's fighting, Big C? Your thoughts?
When you're a competitor,
yeah.
Okay, you want to be a competitor until people say you can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
You don't just walk away prematurely, because we've seen that with so many athletes that have walked away prematurely. Well, as an athlete and as a competitor, you do it as long as you can. That's what we're seeing with Michael Phelps going against a shark.
Yeah.
but you know, it's
Yeah.
weather.
Yeah.
We know he has money. Everybody knows he has money.
Yeah.
But he also has that desire to continue to grow physically. You know,
Yeah.
as an athlete, to not let his talents diminish. And you go ask any retired athlete, did they quit too soon? And everyone will tell you
Yeah,
yes.
they say
regardless
yeah.
of the reason why they retired.
Yeah.
They'll say they had one more year left in them, two
Yeah.
more years left in them, that they quit too early. Because once you stop as an athlete, a competitive athlete, Charlton, you can't take 2 years off and say, okay, I'll be back.
Yeah, and come back.
We've seen that with so many great athletes in the past, trying to make that comeback 2 years after being competitive, and it just wasn't there. You know, we hope the best for Marshawn Lynch in Oakland
Yeah.
after coming back out of retirement, but it's not always in the best interest of an athlete to be in a non-competitive stage and then say, okay, I'm just going to bring my skills
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
I think the biggest plus for Mayweather, Charlton, is that there's no one in his league that he boxes.
No.
There's no one of his talent set. So he doesn't have to box every 2 to 3 months.
Yeah.
He can box every 8 months.
Yeah.
And 12 months, and he's okay. Because there's no one who can really challenge him. He's undisputed
Yeah.
as the best out there. And so this thing with McGregor, to get $100 million payday, Charlton,
Yeah.
and not really be looking at the chance of getting hurt, losing your title, you got to respect the free money.
Yeah, you said free money. I think it was Jerry Grier back in the day. He did a movie. He was the Lee Steinberg. He said, "Show me the money." I think that's what Mayweather does. Show me more money. There was this movie called Show Me the Money. They should put that money Mayweather in that one, Big C. So obviously, no matter who wins, I love UFC, MMA fighting, and I love boxing. I think it's great for fans who just want to see something that's entertainment purposes. But I don't expect much more than any type of fiasco. I wouldn't be surprised if Floyd Money Mayweather gets the win, and then McGregor comes back and kicks him or chokes him out with a rear-legged chokehold after the fight, so we can have more fiasco in the ring. Something crazy is going to happen in that fight. I don't think it's going to be let's shake hands and congratulations. I don't think we're going to see that at all. And as far as that, I want to say sports is a billion-dollar industry, and boys and girls sports is the foundation to that billion-dollar industry. When you need sports, you need athletic insurance. We go through Ben and Mark. They've been around half a century. We follow them with Big C Sports. If you tweet out to them or call them, let them know that Charlton and Big C sent you, whether you're a pro athlete, a collegiate athlete, or you're high school, even mom and pop soccer teams, we got you covered. Big C, speaking of, we just saw the Golden State Warriors in their celebration in I won't say a great series over Cleveland, but the games were exciting, whether you want to see a blowout or you want to see how Cleveland kept fighting back. And now we come up to the draft and who's going to go where. We know Lonzo Ball out of UCLA, Southern California kid. His father's done a lot, just trying to market his name. But now it looks like some teams are willing to start looking at Ball because they're not so stuck on having a blind or narrow vision just for the Lakers. If they don't get, if the Lakers don't pick him, what's he do? So I think he's starting to try out for other teams. Your thoughts on what's happening with Ball, Big C, your thoughts?
Charlton, I watched Ball about this draft proceeding from the start. He has no leverage, okay?
No.
He has no power, no clout when it comes to determining where he wants to go in the NBA draft.
Yeah.
He has his dad who has a big mouth that's shooting it off all the time.
Yeah.
But the kid has to go wherever he's drafted. If he's drafted number 5 in the draft, he will report to that team. This is not a scenario like a John Elway was some 35 years ago in the NFL draft when you were already playing for the Yankees and you said, hey, I'm not going to play in Indianapolis, so you trade me or lose me to baseball.
Yeah.
He doesn't have that kind of leverage. He's a one-dimensional athlete. He's a basketball player.
Yeah.
Now, Danny Ainge likes him a lot in Boston.
Yeah.
But also, he would be a great fit in Philly if they make that number 1 trade swap.
Yeah.
Because you look at all the big men that Philly have that they've drafted over the last 3 years.
Yeah.
They have a wealth they have 3 7-footers in Philly.
Yeah.
So they need somebody who can distribute the ball to them. Not only that, they drafted Ben Simmons last year that everybody says now has grown up to be 6'10". So
wow.
he's just like a Kevin Durant in height.
Yeah.
But he has better ball skills. So if you look at that, you make Simmons the 2, you got Ball at the 1. You can play 2 of those big men inside, and you will have a great force offensively and defensively in Philadelphia. But what Boston is doing, Charlton, is stockpiling draft picks.
Yeah.
They're building for when LeBron James is gone. they want to be the power of the East again.
Yeah.
So if they can build some players up, LeBron James will be out of the East within the next 2 years. That's what they're looking at. Danny Ainge is very savvy, but Ball is a tremendous player.
Yeah.
It's just you have to worry about the baggage called dad that he'll be bringing along.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. And I think as you get to the NBA, number one, I do want to commend his father, because if you don't advocate for your own child, then who else will? Whether he's go over the top with it or not, there's a lot of people who would like to have that, and I'm proud of him as a man for doing that. Of course, he's going to take some criticism, but there's a lot of guys would love to be in that situation. As far as who's on the board, Big C, there's a kid named Markelle Fultz, and he's out of Washington for the Huskies. So he played against Ball over in the Pac-12, but Ball got a lot more attention being down at UCLA. I do wish both kids success at the next level if they can make it there and make a team, Big C, because getting there is one part. Having the chance to make the team is another. And when you speak of making teams, I want to get your thoughts on this one story, because you brought it up earlier and people keep talking about it. And you just mentioned that Boston's building for when LeBron James is out of the league, okay? Or at least out of the Eastern Conference. There's still some talk. I know you said it makes no sense for him to go maybe to LA or whatever because he's in the Western Conference. There's talks of him coming to the Clippers. We already covered that story yesterday, but now I heard it again today on ESPN that he might go to the Clippers because they're building a new arena, but he's getting too old now. I think he makes more sense in the Eastern Conference because he's at least going to be NBA official, if that makes any sense, into the NBA championship. But they're not going to do it knocking off the Golden State Warriors, at least for the next 3 or 4 years coming up. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you talk about the Golden State Warriors. You had the San Antonio Spurs out there as well as the Clippers. I don't know if the Lakers will be relevant over the next 2 to 3 seasons, Charlton.
Yeah.
With the roster that they have right now. But don't forget about the Portland Trail Blazers and the Utah Jazz.
Yeah.
You got 2 teams there that both have won over 50 games in the past season. So, logically, everybody thinks the Clippers, they think the Lakers.
Yeah.
The best fit for LeBron James in the West would be in San Antonio, Charlton.
You think so?
That would be the best fit for LeBron James in the Western Conference, would be in San Antonio. Think about it. You got Kawhi Leonard there already, okay?
Yeah.
You have Kawhi Leonard. Chris Paul is talking about wanting to go to San Antonio in free agency.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
You got a built-in point guard with Chris Paul, somebody who can handle the ball along with LeBron James. Greg Popovich knows how to put together pieces. He has LaMarcus Aldridge in the center,
Yeah.
who is still in his 20s. So the pieces are in San Antonio. When you look at all the Western Conference teams,
Yeah.
other than Golden State, San Antonio has the best opportunity to be the next best team out there. Now, every year they always win 50 games, Charlton.
Yeah.
They even exceed 60
Yeah.
from time to time.
Yeah.
But, to have a coach like Popovich who understands players and how to manipulate his roster
Yeah.
and the rotation, he understands. But already, everybody's talked about everybody except for Kawhi Leonard for
Yeah.
being a superstar that LeBron James would play with.
Yeah.
You talk about matching players. Kawhi Leonard is a better player right now than George in Indiana, okay?
Yeah.
He's a much better player. So you go out and you find me 5 players right now on teams that are better than Kawhi Leonard. And I'm not talking about the Warriors and I'm not talking about the Cavaliers. I'm talking about the rest of the NBA.
Yeah.
We're going to give, Harden his praise. We're going to give Westbrook his praise.
Yeah.
But beyond that, go out and find 5 players that are better than Kawhi Leonard in the West, Charlton.
Yeah.
They're not. They don't exist. So, you think about the Western Conference, he's probably the 4th best player in the Western Conference, 4th or 5th best player.
Yeah.
Because you're going to take Curry and Durant out of the equation. You're going to take Harden and Westbrook out of the equation. So now you have Kawhi Leonard. Which one of these players match best with LeBron James?
Yeah.
Kawhi Leonard does, Charlton.
Yeah, and
This takes it back to Miami with Chris Bosh or Dwayne Wade.
Yeah.
That same type of player. So if you talk about LeBron moving west, I understand he got a house in L.A.
Yeah.
But he also got a private jet, too. So
You think they can fly all over the country in those things?
so he can get home.
Oh, yeah. I'll be back.
The governor, I'll be back. Every night when he left Sacramento, he flew home to Burbank.
That's funny.
So
Yeah.
he was back the next day at work.
Yeah.
LeBron James has that same ability, Charlton.
Yeah, and in fact, the governor would often make stops in Bakersfield, if you understand what I'm saying, Big C. But we won't touch that story. I know it's a direct. Yeah. And they got some good hamburgers down there, if you understand what I mean, Big C. Also, there was a story called, sports science. They do this thing. They had ball throwing a basketball, passing a basketball, Big C, of all things, through a Cadillac Escalade. It looks like the one you drive, but this was clean, so I know it wasn't you. But I just thought that was funny. They're using the Escalade to show how good his skills are. So obviously, the marketing thing, they have it down. If he doesn't make a $1 million contract through basketball, he can definitely do it through his father actually helping him come up with all these skits. So a lot of things with the talent of that man and the Ball family. They also have a lot of other, brothers coming along the scene too after them. But
Charlton, you talk about his dad. His dad did make a bad move on his behalf.
What's that?
His dad walked away from a $20 million shoe contract.
Wow.
That was on the table because he was talking about he wanted to continue marketing his own brand of shoes.
Yeah.
It was Nike and Adidas that had $20 million laying on the table.
Yeah.
And his dad walked away from it. So his dad might be intelligent, but he's not a very smart man, okay? I don't care. $20 million is $20 million.
Yeah, I'd take the $20 million too.
You take that and run with that for 5 years. That's not a bad payday.
Well,
his dad's greed factor was so much that he turned down the $20 million on his son's behalf.
Well, he may be a Sylvester Stallone fan, Big C, where I think he was offered a lot of money to do the role with Rocky, but he said, no, I'm going to do it myself. He sold his dog and found the way. Now he's worth a lot of money, too. And maybe, California's land of 420, Big C. Maybe he already has $20 million. I mean, you're not motivated for someone to give you something you already have. Does that make sense, Big C?
Charlton, whether you do it,
That's funny, Big Z. And speaking of $20 million, I want to get your opinion because I know you play a lot of golf when you're not fishing down there in the South, Big C. The thing about you good old boys down the South, when you guys hit the golf ball, you hit it into the lake. I mean, sometimes those lakes are alligator infested. A lot of good old boys do that. But let me ask you, what's wrong with the world of golf? I was watching one of the tournaments just over the weekend on TV, Big C, and they were showing, I think, around the 17th hole. Let's say the fans could hold about 2,000 people. There must have been about 50 people out there watching. In fact, I was wondering, is it a live event or is this practice? What's happening to the fan base with golf? We just talked about 265 international media coming to see the NBA Finals. Why has golf fallen off like overnight, Big C? Your thoughts?
Golf, Charlton, is gone. It needs
some color.
CPR.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when you look at the U.S. Open right now, Charlton,
it's embarrassing.
About the big names who missed the cut.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Justin Day.
Yeah.
Misses the cut.
Yeah.
Jordan Spieth misses the cut.
Yeah. You think they missed the cut? You think they missed the cut? Or did they not want to be there because there's no one paying attention, Big C? That's kind of embarrassing when you have $1 million with sponsor and anyone can walk in off the street and sit down, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, look at American Roy and Bubba Watson, Charlton. They also missed the cut.
Yeah.
Dustin Johnson just barely made the cut. Phil Mickelson didn't show.
Yeah.
And I appreciate Phil because his
daughter
graduation took precedence.
Yeah.
So when you're out there this weekend and you're a fan or a so-called fan of golfing, who are you going to watch?
Yeah.
There's really nobody to cheer for. Two of the three top golfers in the world missed the cut. So, as a golf fan, you're going out there saying, okay, who is this guy?
Right.
You got to have a photo and a scorebook to find out who's playing.
Yeah.
So, there's no draw. So how does the network really push this tournament this weekend other than being what it is?
Yeah.
They don't have a clear-cut perspective of who's the dominant player in this thing.
No.
Because it's just anybody's game right now. So golf right now really needs a leader.
Yeah.
But they don't have it. It's almost like going to the bar.
Yeah.
And it's trying to figure out who's going to pick up the last tab.
Yeah.
That's what golf is right now.
Yeah, and that's a shame because I just recall even before this last thing with Tiger and whatever he was driving under the influence of, it was not alcohol, so we know that. But I think that got more attention then this golf tournament has gotten interest. And I don't know if it, I mean, I do think just because what I see, because sports is about diversity. If you can't find diversity in sports, and you probably can't find it anywhere, sports is more integrated than the church. And a lot of people swear by going to church on Sundays, but most churches are segregated. And golf reminds me of that segregated world where it's dying off because the mainstream population is not just lily white anymore. It's about being diverse. And when you have the number one selling jerseys in the NBA, they're not bought by black kids. They're bought by white kids, Big C. So a lot of these kids now, they don't worship their father's heroes or their grandfather's heroes. They worship people who are diverse. And they worship people who are in a diverse background, whether it's Cristiano Ronaldo and doing his thing in the world of soccer, Big C, whether you have someone like Steph Curry or Durant or LeBron James. These guys are household names. If you look at Russell Wilson in the NFL, you look at Beast Mode, what he's done, coming back to Oakland, how many people are looking at what he's doing, or Tom Brady for the New England Patriots. I mean, baseball is not as diverse, of course, as the NFL or the NBA, but at least it has something. But golf has no people of color that can really swing about 25% of the population, and they're saying, hey, let me tune in so I can at least see someone who looks like me. Does that make any sense at all, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charles, we can go back to the Masters with your buddy Billy Bean, and
Oh, Billy Payne, yeah.
That he had to the media.
Yeah.
But the biggest story in the Masters, Charlton, was Tiger Woods
not being there, yeah.
Wasn't a drunk Dustin Johnson falling down the stairs.
right.
He falls down the stairs, and he was the favorite for the tournament.
Yeah.
But, they got off the story real quick when they found out alcohol was involved, and
Yeah.
just left it alone and said, we hope that he has a speedy recovery.
Isn't that something?
All he had to do was put the bottle down.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah.
He'd have a speedy recovery.
Yeah.
But the biggest story was Tiger withdrawing from the tournament, 10 days out.
Yeah.
That story resonated throughout the Masters.
Yeah.
And Johnson being drunk, falling down the stairs.
Yeah.
Very little coverage.
They didn't cover it at all.
Tiger Woods, Charlton, for an entire Masters weekend.
Yeah.
Was the story because Tiger didn't show.
Yeah.
He withdrew. So that's where golf is. Golf is hungry.
Yeah.
Golf is still hungry for just a Tiger.
Yeah.
He would play like a Cub now, but they still want him.
Yeah.
Because of what he brings them, what he makes them.
Yeah.
And there's no one that they can gravitate to right now. When we talked about just a moment ago.
Yeah.
Two of the top 3 players in the world missed the cut
Yep.
in the U.S. Open.
Yeah.
So where does that leave golf?
Yeah.
When the best supposedly the best players in the world can't make the cut.
Yeah.
Do they care or what?
Well, Big C, I think it's a way for them to save face because they're getting paid a lot of money for sponsors to say, we want to put you in front of a lot of people. If you have the best golfers supposedly in the world playing in front of empty stands, what is that telling you? That's a way for the people that the people that matter in golf to say, let's find a way not to have you guys here because people aren't coming, so we can say they didn't come because these top guys didn't make it. Maybe they'll try to market better for the next big golf tournament. But could you imagine for the NBA Finals if Golden State comes out to play Cleveland and they have a 20,000-seat stadium and there's 6,000 people in the arena? Could you imagine what they would do to make up for the stories? They would have to find a way, and that's what golf is held with. But golf for a long time has done something that we said should not be allowed to happen in the world of sports. Cut out this segregated behavior. And it happens when they don't reach out to people outside of lily white kids that grew up in an upper middle class community because it's expensive. And that's all they've wanted. They've tried to keep other people out. And we know that. Even if we swing it across the border to tennis. When Serena Williams came on and Venus Williams, their father got them involved in it in Southern California. They had the same type of kind of people looking over their shoulders, who's the elephant in the room mentality. And golf for too long has embraced that. But we kept saying over time that this world, especially the United States, people love sports and people will get together and they'll galvanize other people because people love the sports business. And as long as you have this segregated golfing tournament, this segregated golf world, you're always going to ostracize people that can bring in a huge fan base for your Big C. If there's anything you would say to golf to have them be more inclusive, the same way Muhammad Ali made boxing inclusive, what would your story be to golf, Big C? Your thoughts?
It's hard to get something to change against spectrum, okay?
Yeah.
And that's what golf is. Golf has always been that game that outpriced people who could not afford it, okay?
Yeah, intentionally.
We talked about that with the price
Yeah.
And I remember getting into games for $1.
Yeah.
Okay? In baseball games to go sit out in the bleachers. You cannot do that anymore, Charlton. You know, unless you have a $25,
Yeah.
you cannot get into a baseball game. And so young kids have been priced out of it. Just like with golf, you know, the average round of golf, I mean, you know, you look, you just had the NBA title played
Yeah.
out here at Golden State. Pebble Beach is not that far away. Okay?
Yeah, gorgeous.
Monterey, what?
Yeah.
Basically 100 miles away.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
And to get around to golf on Pebble Beach, you're talking $600, Charlton.
Yeah.
$600. Now think about how many Americans make $600 a day. Okay?
Yeah, yeah.
And so when you spoke about Oakland, the plight of Oakland, the Bay Area,
Yeah.
where the jobs are just not there like they should be because the warehousing industry has dried up.
Yeah.
A lot of businesses have moved away. Silicon Valley has been the horse
Yeah.
that has driven that region. People in Silicon Valley, Charlton, can afford to play in Pebble Beach, okay?
Yeah.
People in Oakland cannot. That's the difference. And so you got a lot of minority base there in Oakland where you don't have that minority base in Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
So that's the difference in golf, Charlton. When you have the exclusive clubs, I mean, your president, Donald Trump, owns several major golf courses, okay?
Mm-hmm.
The only minorities out there are the ground ski.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'm Marissa, and sometimes she's hitting, if you understand what I'm saying. But you're right. And so I know that this is pushback of inclusion. But if you're too stupid to realize that diversity is going to make you millions and billions of dollars, then you deserve to have a lot of people not show up. You got to help people feel comfortable when they come, and not just the guys that are like Tiger Woods who are like a rarity in life. But if you reach out to smaller groups of people of color, and so instead of building walls, invite people in, because golf is a beautiful game. I just hate to see that it's such a segregated game, and I think the bottom line is going to have them change that rather hopefully sooner than later, Big C. Speaking of things that are fast and changing lanes, your friend, the way you guys drive down south, there's a good old boy named Jimmy Johnson with a NASCAR. Not only has he done a lot to put himself on the map as far as a great driver, Big C, but this guy has a bright future ahead. I think his contracts continue to add up, Big C. Your thoughts? Yeah.
Now, you think about how successful Jimmy Johnson's been throughout his career, Charlton. He's won 7 NASCAR championships. You know, he's won 83 sprint car NASCAR races all time.
Yeah.
You know, which is tied for 6 all time.
Yeah.
So he's only 10 victories behind Jeff Gordon.
Yeah.
But this is one of the iconic figures that's still left out there on the NASCAR circuit.
Yeah.
He's tied with Richard Petty and the late Dale Earnhardt.
Yeah.
You know, for the 7 championships.
Yeah.
So he's an iconic figure that the sport really needs. And see, this is what major sports do when you keep your stars around
Yeah.
and you keep them on the top shelf where everybody can recognize them.
Yeah.
That's the difference also, Charlton, between NASCAR, which is generally lily white,
Yeah.
and golf, which is generally lily white.
Yeah.
Their stars remain stars in the sports, Charlton, and they market their stars.
Yeah.
Their stars don't fall off. They show up for every race and they compete.
Yeah.
Where in golf, you know, if you go out and get drunk and fall down the stairs, you can't compete out there.
Yeah.
That happens.
Yeah.
You know, you can't get drunk and drive a NASCAR car, right?
No, you can't.
You can't hang out with me and Chris Moonshine and think you're going to race next year.
Yeah.
You're not going to be too cerebral.
No, that's true.
To do that. So
Yeah.
the girl boys in NASCAR keep it clean. They may drink some Gatorade, some Powerade or something, but they
Yeah.
don't hang out.
No, they don't drink no Gatorade. You know that, Big Z. That's funny. That's funny, Big Z.
But Jimmy Johnson, you know, this is a man who drives hard and races hard. John.
Yeah.
And he has such a fan base. And, you know, for Hendrix Motorsports to tie him up for the next 3
Yeah,
years.
that's good.
You understand how valuable he is to the game of NASCAR. John.
Yeah.
That they need that lead horse in that race every time. And that's what Jimmy Johnson has brought throughout his career, Charlton, with
Yeah.
83 victories.
Yeah, and I remember getting NASCAR, watching God. I remember Big Daddy Don Garlett, AJ Foyt, Richard Petty as a little boy, just watching race cars. And I never really thought about how exclusive these events were. These guys make a huge money in sponsorship, Big C. But as a young African-American boy growing up, you always look for the guy that looks like you, even if it's subconscious. And for a lot of my young white friends, they could always look to see their hero. But it didn't bother me. But, I mean, maybe it did, but I just didn't know it. My favorite player growing up as an athlete was watching Terry Bradshaw, maybe because the Steelers were winning 4 Super Bowls in a row, and they were just always on television because they were always winning. It didn't really matter that he was a Caucasian guy. It was just I liked that team. But what I love about what it did for me, as I saw Lynn Swann, the African American, they had, Franco Harris, they called him the Black Italian. They had Mel Blount in the secondary, Mean Joe Green. And Mean Joe Green, if you think about it back in the day, Big C, when he made that Coke commercial, he did it as an African-American athlete. There were not a lot of black men giving commercials, and they had a white kid receiving his jersey, if you recall. So even what made the Steelers so popular back in the day is they used an integrated team, of course, and they had an integrated commercials. They were not just this lily white thing that golf has done, and maybe NASCAR's done it too, but they don't have 100, everything is a sellout for NASCAR either. But I just think this push for inclusion, if they understand the way Branch Ritchie did, they do it to make more money. That's why you want to diversify golf. It kind of pains me to be a sports guy, and I watch one of the golf's major events, and I hardly see anybody there. And I know NASCAR has a similar thing, but hopefully they'll reach out to the younger kids and make them feel like they can be a part of it too, Big C. And I hope that's the direction they take. Big C, your thoughts on that?
Well, NASCAR can do that, Charlton, because it's more marketable. The tickets are affordable. Kids love speed. I mean, you think about it. I remember growing up, Charlton, when the Hot Wheel cars came
Oh, yeah.
out.
I still got some of them.
and everybody had the Hot Wheel cars.
Yeah.
And Hot Wheels were marketed after NASCAR. You
Yeah.
had all the NASCARs in the Hot Wheel set, Charlton.
Yeah.
And so kids could actually see and feel what the racers had.
Yeah.
And then, so it was always targeted where the youth could have an opportunity to be a part of it. You think about when you're a kid and you built this little soapbox car,
Yeah.
just to push up and down the hill. That was
Yeah.
the early beginning of NASCAR, Charlton. And even kids, I remember when they came out with the scooters and everything. We used to make those from skates. We'd take a pair of skates apart, put together a couple of boards,
Yeah.
and make our own scooter before somebody learned how to market it. And we had that concept long before it was marketed on Madison Avenue.
Yeah, that's true.
So kids have always had an opportunity to entrench themselves as part of NASCAR.
Yeah.
From the Matchbox car sets to the Hot Wheels, it has been a part of Americana.
Yeah.
And kids going to the race with their dads.
Yeah.
Sitting there, going out to the garage, working on the car with your dad.
Yeah.
Under the hood, trying to figure out what he was doing, sliding under the car. Not knowing what you was looking at, but you were under there in his way anyway.
Yeah, that's funny, Big
But
C.
that's where NASCAR comes from, Charlton.
Yeah.
Is from family involvement.
Yeah.
NASCAR has always been a family sport.
Yeah.
Where the young and the old, you see 3-4 generations going to the track. Not only that, you get some of them hot dogging women going to the track also.
Yeah, I understand that too, Big C. That's funny. And as we get ready for our final segment, Big C, of this beautiful Friday, happy Friday for June 16th, 2017. I know the world of POTUS. He had some statements. Obviously, our thoughts go out to the congressmen that were shot at in Washington at a ballpark, and I think it's Alexandria, Virginia, a nice area. But I think I feel for them and I pray for them. But at the same time, a lot of these same guys tried to soften the gun control bills that the Obama administration wanted to make it tougher to buy a gun. And they were all thinking, oh, no, who wants to take away our guns? We don't want to let you take away our guns. And they had this great pushback against President Obama. Now that they had one of their own gunned down, okay, and thank God they didn't have more of them tragically injured. But now they seem to be, well, let's do something to stop this gun violence and make it more difficult for people to get a gun. Big C, your thoughts on POTUS and that backlash that he's going to get for being yet again another hypocrite? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I'm waiting to see Ron LaPierre come out, the president of the NRA.
Yeah.
I want to see him come out with a statement, on guns and why Americans should have guns.
Yeah.
2 Capitol Hill police officers were shot.
Yeah.
They were there protecting the congressman.
Yeah.
And they were wounded.
Yeah.
As well as the congressman and a couple of the individuals that were there, Charlton.
Yeah.
This is what I want to hear. I want to hear Ron LaPierre,
He won't.
president of the NRA, and I want to hear Donald Trump stand up and talk about the Second Amendment right, because the Second Amendment right gave this nutcase the right to go out and shoot
Yep.
political and police figures, Charlton.
Yeah.
Every time we see a police officer shot in America, okay, the Second Amendment gives you the right to go out and do that.
Yeah.
And so all these gun lobbyists who want to say, guns are fine in the right
In the right hands.
But you don't need law You
Yeah.
don't need a gun that fires 30 to 200
No.
rounds, okay?
Not at all.
In one setting. You don't need that.
No.
To go out and hunt, Charlton, you need 6 shells. Period. 6.
Yeah.
When you have handguns, a Tech 9 that will fire off 100 rounds. When you have these Glocks, Charlton, that hold 16 in a magazine.
Yeah.
You don't need that to shoot a duck. You don't.
No, you don't.
Really don't.
No.
The NRA does not need that to go out and shoot bear meat. You really don't.
No, you don't.
One, maybe 2 shots when you're out hunting.
No,
But
not at all.
To say that somebody needs 30 rounds in a clip to walk around in inner city, Charlton, you should not be allowed to have a long gun within any city limits in America.
And you know,
You should not.
yeah, you're 100% right with that, Big C. It's just, and again, I feel for anyone who's ever faced any type of injury, but I think about POTUS talking about, this gentleman was never called a thug. He's a Caucasian male that did this. But the media has not called him a thug. They have not called him a terrorist. They have not called him a Mexican and a rapist the way Donald Trump has labeled all Mexican Americans, which is a joke. But as a white male, all they're saying is he was jobless.
He's not a member of the radical Islamic.
No.
He wasn't one of the. I saw him. He had a goatee. I saw a picture of him.
Yeah.
So I would imagine. I thought the president would have come out and said he was a member of the radical Islamic State.
Yeah.
And that's the reason
No.
why he needed a travel ban to keep people like this out of America.
Isn't that ironic?
Think about it, Charlton. Every time there's been an attack in America where multiple killings have taken place,
Yeah.
these have been American citizens.
Caucasians.
American citizens.
Caucasian American citizens.
Even the Miami nightclub, the Orlando nightclub a year ago, Charlton, that was an American citizen.
Yeah.
The one in California 2 years ago, those were American citizens. So these weren't people who just came into the country.
No.
These are people who live here.
No.
I mean, I go back to Timothy McVeigh in
Oklahoma City.
Building there when he blew it up.
Yeah.
And the first thing they said that this was an attack, Muslim attack, which it wasn't.
No.
It was a white boy from down the street in the trailer park.
Yeah.
That's where he was from.
Yeah.
And they even rented down at the local U-Haul truck and brought it down there and blew the place up.
Yeah.
So it's amazing how it's addressed when one of these radical white Americans goes out and shoots up other Americans.
Yeah.
Is that, well, we got to figure out what went wrong.
Yeah.
We got to check into his background. Maybe he was abused as a child. Maybe his girlfriend had broke up with him. It's always a damn excuse.
Yeah, always an excuse.
When some white American go out and shoot up, the white boy who went up shot up the church 2 years ago in Carolina.
Yeah.
Okay? There was some problem. We're trying to get to the bottom of it. We knew he was radical.
And he wasn't called a thug.
The white boy that went up and shot the middle school, the little grammar school in Newtown, Charlton, Connecticut, 5 years ago.
Yeah.
All right?
Yeah.
And he went and shot all the school kids.
Yep.
All these little kids that were 5, 6, 7 years old, and a couple teachers.
Yeah.
Okay, well, he had mental problems. You damn right he had a mental problem. You go in and shoot up a grammar school.
Yeah. That's a.
You're a sick puppy to start with.
And that's.
But to be defended by
Yeah.
white American media, Charlton.
Yeah.
To be defended by white American media, just like this guy in Washington. He's semi-defended by white American media.
Never called a thug.
Animal.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah. Not called a vicious animal, not called a thug, not called a terrorist, not called anything other than he was without a job, but he was angry. So my heart goes out to anybody who's ever suffered any type of crime. But you can Google how white men are judged in media when they do something stupid compared to black men or Hispanics. I just want everyone to Google that and see how many times he's been called a thug by national media or the president of the United States. Hasn't happened.
The president called him a bad hombre, Charlton.
No, he didn't call him anything.
He's a bad hombre. We got to get him out of here.
Yeah.
The president really didn't speak anything negative of this guy. Now, he shoots up some of the president's constituents.
Yeah. Yeah.
The president was kind in speaking about the guy.
Yeah.
The president said, well, he died of his injuries.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
This is as harsh as the president can speak about the guy.
Yeah.
Because he was a white guy that looked like him.
Yeah, I agree with that. So, Big C, if we don't put it out on Big C Sports, nobody else will. I want to make sure everybody is treated fair with opportunity and peace and justice and liberty and justice for all. But if we don't bring it up when we see something that's considered alternative fact, then nobody else will the way Big C Sports does. Big C, we know that sports will keep everybody safe. We've talked about the NBA, how over 265 international journalists came to watch it from 35 different countries. We talked about the great Michael Phelps. Michael, be careful swimming with the sharks, Big C. I thought it was going to be a Shark Tank. I didn't know he was going to be in a real Shark Tank, Big C. We talked about Las Vegas and that money going heavy on Conor McGregor versus Floyd Money Mayweather. That's kind of something crazy, but it makes sense from the betting world. We talked about all the things with the Ball family and the golf. Where are the fans for golf? I mean, do people even know we have golf tournaments? Jimmy Johnson doing his thing with NASCAR. They're increasing his contract. And then POTUS, Big C, what are you looking forward to coming up on this great weekend? Go right ahead, sir.
Well, Johnson, I'm looking for a half-empty U.S. Open.
Yeah.
This is just that golf tournament that really with no big names left in it. You know, we got prepping for the NBA draft coming up in about 6 days. Johnson,
Yeah.
We're going to find out where the trades are and who's going to go number one and who's going to move in free agency.
Yeah.
You know, this everything's exciting. Baseball. I'm looking forward to the College World Series that's coming up, Charles.
Oregon State.
Everybody headed to Omaha.
Yeah.
You know, it's an exciting time in men's baseball in college. Also got the Women's College World Series in full swing, Jonathan. So just for the college athletes, it seems like it never ends. There's always a championship there to be had. And so just a great time for those young men and women. Looking forward to a great weekend for them, Jonathan.
Well, Big C, you do it so well as you always do, closing out on Big C's Wheels. We want to tell everybody that every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide, follow Big C Sports on the iHeart Radio Network, the #1 network in the United States of America, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. We always want to tell you there's never any excuse for any woman to ever feel afraid. If you know any woman going through any type of domestic violence, just call 911 because she should not have to deal with that on her own. And as we always tell you under every Big C Sports program, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.